What we're going to do is we're just going to get started. All right, so this is where we're at right now with it. And like I said, this document here is 11 pages, you know what I'm saying? So it's not too taxing, but there are some key points that we need to go over to kind of understand where our frame of thinking needs to be as indigenous peoples. All right, so for one, this draft has been approved, all right, at the IACHR, Inter-American Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Draft of the Inter-American. So, session was held on September 18th, 1995, all right? So, I'm not going to go through everything you can read, but this is the Commission on Human Rights. Preamble, number 1. Indigenous institutions and the strengthening of nations. The member states of the Organization of American States. So the member states of the organization. Okay? Meaning member states of the Organization of American States. Meaning that there can be multiple states within a so-called state republic. There can be a U.S. state, there can be a tribal state, there can be a nation state, and all these dwelling their authorities from a certain society within the framework of the corporation that we would call a province. All right, province. So you need to look up what a province is, and then you'll understand that. So let's go right here. Recalling that the indigenous peoples of the Americas constitute an organized, distinctive, and integral segment of their population and are entitled to be a part of the country's national identity and have a special role to play in strengthening the institutions in the state and in establishing national unity based on democratic principles. So understanding this is about eating the fish and spitting out the bones, all right? When they say state, I'm not talking about getting involved in your corporate state or the state of. I'm talking about getting involved, coming together as people, creating our own nation state within the Moorish Empire, turning ourselves back into the Moorish Empire, going back to our natural state of citizenship, which was a citizen of our empire. All right, citizen of your nation state or your foreign state, which is an entity. All right, so NAACP is considered a state. Any type of association or partnership or you know, where people come together for a common goal, that is considered a state. This is why there's an important document you guys should read up called the Articles of Association. And also, if you look up on the Bill of Rights, it also states that the first article of the Bill of Rights states that we have a right to associate with whom we want and to not associate. Association. Don't you see how associate and assimilate? Associate, assimilate. Associate, assimilate. We have a right not to force assimilation. So we have a right not to join or be part of certain associations that we don't want to fuck with. Period. That's a common sense rule for any person on the planet. Alright. I'm not going through this entire document. This is for you to read. I'm going through the main points. Main points. Main points. So check this out. The definition in itself, when they're referring to indigenous peoples, what they're talking about. Definition. In this declaration, indigenous peoples are those who embody historical continuity with societies which existed prior to the conquest and settlement of their territories by Europeans. Period. 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 The people who were here before Europeans came, settled in their territories. That is who indigenous peoples are. Period. This is another important tool in here. Self-identification as indigenous or tribal shall be regarded as a fundamental criteria for determining the groups to which the provisions of this declaration apply. So if you don't self-identify as an aboriginal, then you're not going to kick in the mechanism of these things that are in place. All right. Article 3, right to belong to an indigenous community or nation. Indigenous peoples and individuals have the right to belong to an indigenous community or nation in accordance with the traditions and customs of the community or nation concerned. No disadvantage of any kind, I think this meant to say any, blooper. No disadvantage of any kind may arise from the exercise of such a right. The legal status of communities. The state shall ensure that within their legal system, personality is attributed to communities of indigenous peoples. Meaning that the style of how the judicial system in itself is based off of our own systems that we've had in place before the interruption or the settlement of Europeans in our territories. No forced assimilation. The state shall not take any action which forces indigenous peoples to assimilate, and shall not endorse any theory or engage in any practice that imports discrimination, destruction of a culture, or the possibility of the extermination of any ethnic group. This is where CPS falls into play. Child support falls into play, because the very intentions of those, or the agenda of those entities, are to in fact assimilate the indigenous peoples into second-class citizenship, so they can do what? Split up or break up families through foster care, splitting up the parents, you know what I'm saying? So these are all different levels of attack that are being implemented upon us. But we have a right not to be forced to assimilate, right? We don't gotta fucks with anyone or anything we don't want to fuck with. This is a biggie. Section 3, cultural development. Right to cultural integrity. States shall respect the cultural integrity of the indigenous peoples, their development in their respective habitats, and their historical and archaeological heritage, which are important to the identity of the members of their groups and their ethnic survival. Indigenous peoples are entitled to restitution in respect of property of which they have been dispossessed, or compensation in accordance with international law. States shall recognize and respect indigenous lifestyles, customs, traditions, forms of social organization, use of dress, languages, and dialects. Meaning we are supposed to have our own shit, from the way we talk to the way we dress. Everything. Everything. Alright. This is a big one, right? Because we're dealing with a lot of our children in the Rockefeller's education system, right? Indigenous peoples shall be entitled to establish and set in motion their own educational programs, institutions, and facilities, to prepare and implement their own educational plans, programs, curricula, and materials, to train, educate, and accredit their teachers and administrators. The state shall endeavor to ensure that such systems guarantee equal education and teaching opportunities for the entire population, and complementary with national educational systems. States shall ensure that those educational systems are equal in all ways to that provided to the rest of the populations. States shall provide financial and any other type of assistance needed for the implementation of the provisions of this article. So we can actually get funding to homeschool our children. But we got to be about it. We got to want it. Do you want it? Do you want it? Do you want it? Article, this is a biggie too. Family relations and family ties. Families are a natural and basic component of societies and must be respected and protected by the state. Consequently, the state shall protect and respect the various established forms of indigenous organizations relating to family and filiation. In determining the child's best interest in matters relating to the protection and adoption of children of members of indigenous peoples, and in matters of breaking of ties and other similar circumstances, consideration shall be given by courts and other relevant institutions to the views of those peoples, including individual, family, and community views. So it's vital that we have our own. Vital, vital, vital. Section number 4, organizational and political rights. Rights of association, assembly, freedom of expression, and freedom of thought. The state shall promote the necessary measures to guarantee to indigenous communities and their members their right of association, assembly, and expression in accordance with their usages, customs, ancestral traditions, beliefs, and religions. Okay? I can read the rest. Right to self-government, management, and control of internal affairs. States acknowledge that indigenous peoples have the right to freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development, and that accordingly they have the right to autonomy or self-government with regard to their internal and local affairs, including culture, religion, education, information, media, health, housing, employment, social welfare, economic activities, land and resource management, the environment, and entry by non-members, and to the ways and means for financing these autonomous functions. Indigenous populations have the right to participate without discrimination, if they so decide, in all decision-making at all levels with regard to matters that might affect their rights, lives, and destiny. They may do so through representatives elected by them in accordance with their own procedures. Their own procedures, meaning we have to establish our own nation states, elect our own people to represent us within the particular state republic we're located in. Okay? According to our own customs. So we're not following anyone's guidelines. This is according to how we govern ourselves. Our own constitution, our own bylaws. All right? So the representatives elected by them. Okay? They shall also have the right to maintain and develop their own indigenous decision-making institutions, as well as equal opportunity to access to all national fora. Indigenous law is an integral part of the state's legal system and of the framework in which their social and economic development takes place. Indigenous peoples are entitled to maintain and reinforce their indigenous legal systems and also to apply them to matters within their communities, including systems pertaining to ownership of real property and natural resources, resolution of conflicts within and between indigenous communities, crime prevention and law enforcement, and maintenance of internal peace and harmony. In the jurisdiction of any state, procedures concerning indigenous peoples or their interests shall be conducted in such a way as to ensure the right of indigenous peoples to full representation with dignity and equality before the law. This shall include observance of indigenous law and custom and, where necessary, use of the native language. The main thing to get from that is we're supposed to have our own tribal courts. When we have issues, it should be assigned to our tribal courts so that we can deal with it, because our citizens are our citizens, meaning our fellow brothers and sisters who are nationals of our national community. Those are our nationals. Those are our citizens. Those are our people. Only we can judge over our people. We no longer should allow foreigners to place judgment over us. That time is done for. We need to have our own institutions in place. We need to have our own institution in place. And I'm going to this, man. Alright, I'm going to go into this. But this is where you get a good understanding too. Workers' rights. You know what I'm saying? But this ain't the main thing of my of the lecture today. But I want you to get an understanding of where we are at. Actually, no. I think there's one more thing. One more thing. Indigenous peoples have the right to the recognition, observance, and enforcement of treaties, agreements, and other agreements concluded with states or their successors according to their spirit and intent, and to have states honor and respect such treaties, agreements, and other constructive arrangements. Conflicts and disputes which cannot otherwise be settled should be submitted to competent international bodies, agreed to by all parties concerned. Nothing in this instrument shall be construed as diminishing or extinguishing existing or future rights indigenous peoples may have or acquire. Nothing in this instrument shall be construed as granting any rights to ignore boundaries between states. Alright? But we got to be secure in our own state. Our nation state. Which tribe do you come from? The nation state. Meaning, today, we need to come together and start creating our own states. Our own states. You understand what I'm saying? Prime example, me personally, my public trust is a resident of the state of Washington. Right? I'm a citizen of Washington State Republic. My state is Sunel Shi Al-Maru Republic. That's my nation state. That is the state that I am a citizen of. That is the state that I hold my first allegiance to and obligations to. And Sunel Shi Al-Maru Republic, okay, is a tribal government connected to the Moorish Empire, because the descendants of that particular foreign state which is just an entity. A foreign state is a foreign entity, which also falls into trust. This is what a tribe is, a trust. You create a tribal trust. You have members that you vote in or elect according to your own customs, to your own indigenous customs, right? And these things are what you know what I'm saying, allow you to maintain your self-autonomy to where other foreign laws can't impose on you. Right? So you need to have your own states. You can operate according to your own laws, your own constitution. What is the constitution of your state? The constitution of my state is not the Washington State Constitution. The constitution of my state is the Zodiac Constitution for Sunel Shi Amaru Republic. Okay? That is a segment that is now part of the Moorish Empire. It's new because I am new. My brothers and sisters who are part of my tribe are new. We're the new Moors who have come in with our eyes wide open. And we understand that we need to have our own institutions in place to truly be self-autonomous. Okay? So, with that being said, we're gonna go into this PowerPoint. And this PowerPoint right here is called The Real Bully. I believe a lot of the mishap and understanding is that you know, a lot of people fear the IRS, because the only visuals or memories that people have of IRS are always dealing in negative situations, or situations that don't look too loving, like when they're repossessing people's property, which is not really their property because they're classified as such. You know what I'm saying? So when we're talking about 1040 or federal taxes, excise taxes, sale taxes, any things like these, we have to understand exactly who is who and what is what. The IRS is not the end-all, the be-all. You understand what I'm saying? The IRS is a debt collection, is a debt collector. Yeah, the IRS is a debt collection department, or a debt collector or debt collection entity of the Treasury Department. And if you observe or look at your $1 note, it will show that on the pyramid side, where it says the Great Seal, when you turn to it at the front, the signature will say it's signed by the Secretary of the Treasury. All right, when you look at the eagle side of the seal, which is of the United States, it will say signed by the Secretary of the Federal Reserve. All right, so understanding that the Treasury Department is dealing with the pyramid side of the government, which is our side of the government, the de jure side. All right, the first government in place. So this is what we're dealing with. You know, when we're talking about the IRS, we're thinking they're so small, but really the IRS is in today's shape anyway, you know what I mean, really connected to the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which is connected to the Queen of England. So this is what we're dealing with. All right, the IRS, this is what we're dealing with, a service. We're dealing with an entity that provides a service. That's why they call it the IRS, Internal Revenue Service. They are providing a service. It is up to you to know, or be competent to know, what type of services you need. Do you need to have your finances withheld? Do you need to be taxed? It's based on you and what you need. And when you understand the coding, you know what I'm saying, codify within this. When you understand this, you'll have the key. All right, so you can be on your square in terms of law. So now, the S4 form. This is the form that is utilized, you know, to apply for employer identification number. So this is the form you need to familiarize yourselves with. Okay. And I'm just leading you to where you need to start pointing your direction if you're trying to comprehend trust. This is what you need to understand and start getting your mind wrapped around. This is the language you need to start learning. All right, we need to read. We need to learn how to read. We need to learn how to read again. For real, for real. All right, an employer identification number is necessary to apply for tax exempt status, open a bank account, hire employees, etc., etc. All right, and there's different ways of obtaining that. So why is it that we don't need to be taxed? Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Constitution. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. So we are not taxed. We are not to be taxed at all. However, if you fail to self-identify yourself as what we call Indian, which is a misnomer, right? But we're talking the language of the system. The system is flawed. This is why we're creating our own. All right? So we need to be able to identify the flaws in the system and look past the surface. What is the real meaning, the underlying meaning behind that? All right? So we're not to be taxed. Period. Unless you think otherwise. Okay? This is constitutionally now. Also, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. I'm going to read that one more time. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. Where does it in there say the IRS? The IRS shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. It doesn't say IRS. Therefore, if the IRS is imposing taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, it's not being done so constitutionally. That's private. That means you are contracting. Okay? In a way to where you are waiving your rights. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. So if you don't know that your rights are being waived, then they should be waived. Because if you don't see the value in your rights, then you wouldn't waive them. Ever. Now, excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So only Congress can impose and lay taxes, okay? Not the IRS. And this is why, or these are who, the Indians who are so-called not taxed. This is what they look like. Not what we're taught to see on television. We weren't showing ourselves when they were referencing Aboriginal peoples. You see this mural here? This is a mural of the Maya people, of the ancient Mayan people. Okay? Look at yourself. This is who we are. Look, these are the ancient people of Australia. These are the Aborigines of Australia. Look at who we are. Look. This is us. All right? Now, if you want, you can take this number, put it up into Google, and it'll take you right to this portion of the CFR, Codes of Federal Regulation. You can get cracking on studies, all right, on how to acquire a E.I.N number for your trust or your entity moving forward. So, foreign entities / persons are not required to file a U.S. tax return. Bang, bang. Foreign entities / persons that do not have income effectively connected with the conduct of a trade or business and do not have an office or place of business or fiscal agent or paying agent in the United States are not required to obtain an EIN. However, a foreign entity may need an EIN to comply with IRS withholding regulations, avoid withholding on portfolio assets, or to claim tax treaty benefits. In this case, the taxpayer should complete Form SS4. So now, if we're Aboriginal, then there's a treaty in place somewhere for us. So therefore, we can claim tax treaty benefits by utilizing the treaties that our ancestors left in place for us. To do commerce, not to give up our birthrights, not to settle for a small reservation and give up the rest of the land. No, that is not what our ancestors left behind for us. They left behind opportunity. Okay? So, this is the route to claim tax treaty benefits. If you're talking about claiming tax treaty benefits, because we're, you know, as Moors, we talk a whole lot about the treaty, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. We talk a whole lot about it, but what about putting it into practice to help save ourselves socially, economically, politically? This is how we're going to do it. We got to claim those tax treaty benefits. It makes no sense for them to sit there and collect dust and then give our virtues, our energy to foreigners and trust that they're going to make the right moves with our money. Right? So, and continue reading. It's explaining to you how to fill out the SS4 form depending on who you are as a foreign person to the United States. Corporation. When completing line 7B of Form SS4, the taxpayer should write an A in the block asking for an E.I.N or a social security number, unless the taxpayer has a social security number or E.I.N. So therefore, what that's saying is, do not associate your private and your public. Do not use your social security number to attain your E.I.N number, because you just made it domestic. You do not mix private and public. All right. So when applying for this, no, you don't have an E.I.N number. You don't have an E.I.N number, and no, you don't have a social security number. Do you know why? On line 10, the taxpayer should check the other box and specify on the line on one of the following conditions. You cannot be denied E.I.N number because you don't have a social security number. So read for yourself and get the understanding of what's being said. So on line 10, when the taxpayer should check the other box and specify on the line one of the following conditions. When it says, what is the purpose of creating this entity? For W.A.B.E.N purposes only. For tax treaty purposes only. So the W.A.B.E.N form is utilized for tax treaty purposes only. So if we're claiming tax treaty purposes, now we understand the SS4 form is what we need as a basis to start that process, and a W.A.B.E.N form is what we're needed to continue that process once we establish the entity. All right, because we're utilizing our tax treaty benefits. And what it's saying is, doing this, right, once you continue to read and fill out the form properly, this establishes the entity on a zero file, meaning it's zero. It doesn't have any debts or encumbrances on it. This is what makes it a tax exempt. This is how you don't owe the taxes, because there's no, it's a zero file. It's a master file, not a debtor's file. If the foreign entities individuals above receive a letter from the IRS soliciting the filing of a U.S. tax return, the foreign entity / individual should respond to the letter immediately by stating that it has no requirement to file any U.S. tax returns. Failure to respond to the IRS letter may result in a procedural assessment of tax by IRS against the foreign entity. So don't ignore it. Respond immediately, simply stating, I don't owe you any taxes. That simple. That simple, man. Not complicated. Am I going backwards? I think I am going backwards, y'all. Bye. All right. My bad. So we're going to keep moving forward. Here we go. So, if the foreign entity later becomes liable to file a U.S. tax return, meaning that you can possibly mess up and put your entity back in the United States, depending on your level of study and how serious you take this. So, if the application is received over the phone, ask for the caller's name. This is the note for the agent, the IRS agent that you'll be on the phone with, when you're trying to establish a foreign E.I.N. Ask for the caller's name, social security number, or I.T.I.N, date of birth, and position with the entity. If the caller does not have an SSN or I.T.I.N, and therefore cannot be authenticated using CCNO, which is the program that's being used in reference to the social security number, research that on your own. The new E.I.N. will still be disclosed to the caller as long as their position with the entity authorizes them to receive it. So you don't need a social security number to receive an E.I.N. So once again, if you choose to mix your private and your public by using your social security number to attain a foreign E.I.N., then just know that that foreign E.I.N. has been made liable to file a U.S. tax return because it's not foreign. It was created using a public domestic device. You can't use something domestic to make something foreign. Okay? So this is what happens upon reading. This is how you ensure you don't make these mistakes, because you read and you see for yourself what needs to be done. All right? Foreign entities, definitions and instructions. These are the instructions on how to get a 98 number. These are what we're reading. You know what I'm saying? Mailed in fax form. Entities are assigned an E.I.N. number prefix 98 and are only processed by the Cincinnati International Unit. Okay? Here's how you know what's what. They give you a fax number as well. Telephone calls from foreign entities requesting an E.I.N. are assigned E.I.N. prefix 98 and are only worked by Cincinnati and Ogden International Units. If a call is received in any other location, provide the caller with the E.I.N. international phone number. So get it. So this is the number you need to call. Alright? To create a foreign E.I.N. The instructions are all there. We just got to take the time to read and not rush, so we give ourselves a chance to understand. You know what I'm saying? So here within the codes, they have a listing, all right, of the entities and their definition. No different than the race and ethnicity. They give you the race or ethnicity, and then they give you the definition as to what that race and ethnicity means. Okay? So this is where we get a clear understanding of where private and public comes into play. What's private and what's public. Okay? Domestic, corporation, partnership, or disregarded entity. The term domestic, when applied to a business entity, means created or organized in the United States or under the law of the United States or of any state, unless, in the case of a partnership, the Secretary provides otherwise by regulations. A business entity created or organized both in the United States and in a foreign jurisdiction is a domestic entity, meaning you can't have an entity where the principal location is, within North America, but then it's also within China. Then it will be a domestic entity. Okay? Don't mix public and private. Foreign corporation or partnership. The term foreign, when applied to a corporation or partnership, means a corporation or partnership which is not domestic. So everything opposite of this means it's not created or organized in the United States or under the laws of the United States. All right? So that's what that means. Domestic trust. The term domestic trust means a trust in which a court within the United States is able to exercise primary supervision over the administration of the trust, and one or more U.S. persons have the authority to control all substantial decisions of the trust. Meaning that a domestic trust is a trust in which the court within the United States has the power to exercise primary supervision over that entity, over the administration of the matter. All right, meaning someone else or another person has the ultimate say, not you. This is what a domestic trust is. Let's look at what a foreign trust is. The term foreign trust means any trust other than a domestic trust. Simple. No need to overthink that. You know what I'm saying? No need to overthink that. Oh, sorry, I definitely missed domestic estate. Any estate other than a foreign estate. You already know what foreign is, right? Foreign estate. The term foreign estate means an estate that income of which from sources outside the United States, which is not effectively connected with the conduct of a trade or business within the United States, is not includable in gross income under subtitle A of Title 26 of the U.S. Code. Meaning when you operate through your foreign trust, right? When you operate in your foreign estate, when you get a check and you're working for a job, you get your gross pay and your net pay. All right, your net pay is what you really made. Your gross pay is what you got after everyone took a piece of your energy. What this stating here is that the term foreign state is an entity which is not effectively connected with the conduct of a trade or business within the U.S. and therefore is not includable in gross income. Meaning that your check or your monies or your wages could never be included in gross income, meaning it could never be included in being taxed. Because that's what gross income is. Gross income is the income that you have, or gross wages is what you received after everyone has taken their piece or their percentage. Okay? It's not includable. A foreign estate is not includable in gross income. Keep that in mind. And even here they have a little chart below as to what type of entities are affixed or what determines whether a E.I.N gets a 9/8 number. Alright, so this you guys can take the time to go over through yourselves and understand. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you straight up. So check it. Trying to find the right one here. See here? W.A.Ben. W.A.Ben. Certificate of Foreign Status of Beneficial Owner for United States Tax Withholding. Alright? W.A.E.X.P. is a Certificate of Foreign Government or other foreign form organization for United States tax withholding. With W.A.Ben here, right? Tax treaty. Tax treaties only. This is what we're utilizing. Alright? So now, here we are. We need to build our pyramid. We need to build our indigenous institutions. Alright? And to do that, we need to start off with situational awareness. First of all, we need to know what's going on around us. We need to know what has happened and what is happening right now. And amongst discovering all these things, there are a lot of things that are happening within the self, within the body. A lot of chemical reactions, a lot of emotions, a lot of things are being brought to the surface through realization. A lot of anger, sadness, depression. All these things have to be brought to the surface so they can be released, right? They can't be allowed to simmer or remain, within. They got to come to the surface so they can be pushed out. They got to be pushed out in order for you to move forward. So upon that, this is where we learn to manage our emotions. Right? We got to be on our square at all times. And this is what being on your square means, is managing your emotions. Managing your emotions. Alright? And upon managing our emotions, this is where wisdom comes in. And through the wisdom, we can see the insight loops. Meaning we can see the messages within the message within the message. We're no longer looking at things from a surface value. Right? We're looking at the energy behind it. What is the energy behind what is being presented, not just what is being presented. You know, just looking at things in depth, in deep layers, right? And through looking at things in deep layers, this is where you find the truth, right? Because the truth is right there in our face, but we need to dissect it so we can see where the principle lies. And once we see that principle, that's where the truth discovery comes into play. And then once we see the principles, you know, it's like a math problem. You see the formula, and you're like, all right, so this is the formula, and this is how we've been operating. And we have not been in alignment with the formula. This is why we haven't been getting the results we're looking for. So now we need to align ourselves, or go back to the drawing board and reconfigure the formula we've been using to put it back in alignment with the original formula, which is the formula of nature. All right? This is where the alignment, calibration comes into play, because we got to recalibrate ourselves. We got to retune, realign ourselves, you know what I'm saying, back to our ancient ways, meaning go back to the ways of our ancestors, go back to our truth, because our truth is not European, our truth is American. All right, this is where our ancestry lies, so this is our truth. We need to align ourselves back to our truth. Increase in trust. All right, we need to increase in trust, and that doesn't necessarily mean increase in trusting others. How about the increase in trust of self? The increase in trusting that you know what's best for yourself and that you will never lead yourself wrong. So, because you can't trust others if you don't trust yourself. That's an oxymoron. And if you don't respect or honor your ancestors, or can realize who you are or see yourself, then how can I trust you if you can't trust yourself? And the way I know you can't trust yourself is if you can't honor your ancestors. If you cannot realize the truth, then you cannot trust yourself. All right, and with that comes an increase in unity, because everything within this patriarchal system has been devised in a way where it's divide and conquer, because they don't want us to unify. When we unify, we get things done, because that's when you truly see God, when we become one. All right, hard work, and through hard work we'll get hard-ass results, but tangible, long-lasting results that no one can take away from us, and that our children will be able to look at in admonishment, the same way we look at pyramids today, like, oh man, look at what our ancestors did, even though we are the ancestors we're talking about, right? This is where we need to get to. Indigenous institutions. This is what it's all about. So now we're going to read through this document here, Civil Orders. All right, the Pope came down in 2014, if you all remember. They drove around all the states in a Fiat, all right, and pretty much came to let the U.S. minor know that their time is up. All right, so we're going to take the time and read this document here. So, civil orders issued to all members of the domestic police forces, U.S. Marshal Service, the Provost Marshal, members of the American Bar Association, and the American Armed Services. These organic American states of the Union, known as the United States of America, major, exercising plenary civil power upon the land, hereby appoint General Carter F. Ham to lead and command the Grand Army of the Republic, and its successors under the guidance of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and with their full support. Should it become necessary to suppress commercial mercenary forces operating under the guise of being federal government, agencies including but not limited to the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, etc., General Ham shall assume immediate command and control of all armed forces and services owed to the United States of America major, stationed in North America, and shall join them under his command at the Grand Army of the Republic. All forces of air, land, and sea are to be employed. So, the Pope is pretty much laying it out, that when the Grand Army comes, the armies of the state will band up with the Grand Army of the Republic to annihilate those who are not in honor of the original treaty agreement. It ain't got nothing to do with us. But we're going to continue to read and find out that this has nothing to do with us. Aborigines, of course. Now, any cost or loss suffered, right here, any cost or loss suffered as a result of deployment of the Grand Army of the Republic shall be charged as stipulated prior. All effort shall be made by the Grand Army of the Republic to spare life and property while undertaking any action whatsoever within the states of the Union without exception. The GAR is uniquely enabled by these orders to operate on the land of the 50 organic states for the purposes of securing the lives and property of the American states and American state citizens. The GAR is not a foreign army and is composed primarily of American state citizens. Did y'all understand that? You have American states, which would also be considered foreign states. Like for me, in my instance, Sunashi Al-Maru Republic would be considered an American state. Okay? So I'm an American state citizen. And so it says the GAR is not a foreign army and is composed primarily of American state citizens. It didn't say United States citizens, it said American state citizens. If required to take field position, the local commander shall make every effort to communicate the basis of their authority and the reasons for their presence on American state soil, to ensure a prompt cessation of hostilities and a widespread understanding of the usurpations and acts of fraud which have led to any conflict. All parties must be brought to understand the nature of the federal government, the limitations of its authority, and their own obligation to act in favor of the organic states of the Union. So the Pope is letting us know, he's preparing us, like, yo, when this shit gets crazy, when you see troops start to roll out, you know what I'm saying? You better make sure that you are part of an American state. They didn't say nothing about United States. It said that you are part of an American state, of the organic 50 states, meaning the organic territories. Territory, terra meaning earth. All right? Terra. And it's crazy because in my native tongue of Creole, right, coming from Haiti, we call the dirt, we call it terre. Vous comprenez? Terre. Terra. Terre. That's what we call dirt. Terre. So, you understand what I'm saying? Putting things together. So, oh, I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss that. Now, the Grand Army of the Republic shall continue to operate under General Order 100, known as the Libra Code, extant from the pen of the last Republic President, Abraham Lincoln. I should look that up. That's why you see Abe's face on the penny. Copper-colored people. Start putting the two together. Now, no orders, executive or otherwise, issued by Barack H. Obama pretending authority on the land of the American states while operating as President of the United States Corporation, nor as the President of the United States of America Minor, are owed any performance by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Ham, or any ordinary. All plainly stated grants of contractual authority evident in the Constitution for the United States of America remain in place, subject to good faith performance of the accompanying obligations and treaties. Everything is still there. It's still on point, still on the record. Hasn't been moved, hasn't been changed. Mr. Obama is the president of a governmental services corporation under contract to provide stipulated services to the organic states and is on their payroll. So the organic states created states ofs. So Obama is the president of the Governmental Services Corporation, which comes underneath the state of. And the state ofs are directly connected to the District of Columbia, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, 10 miles square, 10 miles radius square. All right. So within the District of Columbia, you'll find the state ofs. Right. So the states created the state ofs to do business. So Obama is in charge of the state ofs. He's not in charge of the, or I should say, Trump is in charge of the state ofs, because he's the president of a company, and a company is there to make money. He's not in charge of the state republics. He's in charge of the state ofs, and the state ofs are on payroll by the state republics. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So we're going to go back here. So Mr. Obama is the president of a governmental services corporation under contract to provide stipulated services to the organic states and is on their payroll. He otherwise acts as a foreign dignitary, meaning he's acting as a foreign diplomat, representing the United States of America minor, or the corporate, the U.S. corporation, right? Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. In neither of these capacities is he allowed any granted authority to impose upon American state citizens, endanger American state property, or command mercenary forces on American state soil, however veiled as federal civilian service agencies. So, we require the Joint Chiefs of Staff and General Hand to commence measures to disarm federal civilian agency personnel and to seize control of the vast stockpiles of arms which have been improperly amassed by the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, and other agencies employed by the United States. So all these things about FEMA, Homeland Security, concentration camps, Walmart, Walgreens, rounding up people, these are not things put in place by the Pope or the Queen of England. This is the agents of the United States corporation who have gone rogue. They're no longer listening to their superiors. So this is why the Pope had to come down here, because shit's about to get real. So the beef is not with us, but as we're reading, it's getting a little bit more clear what the real issue is, right? And just remember, the Grand Army of the Republic is maintained mostly of American state citizens. American state. To be a part of an American state is to be a part of an American association. Maybe of Aboriginal peoples. That is considered a state. Just saying. Now, the only federal agency allowed free egress on the land of the American states is the U.S. Marshal Service, and then only when their personnel are engaged in their duty to protect the U.S. mail and sworn to act as constitutional officers. All other federal agency personnel are limited to unarmed service until further notice, which means only the U.S. Marshal is to be armed. That means people of the police department, all those guys are to be unarmed. And the mere fact that they're still armed is going to be pretty ugly. Like I said, when we start seeing militia actually out and about in the streets. All right. we direct the Joint Chiefs of Staff to... Give me 1 second. So, back to where we're at. Woo! So right back to where we left off, right? The only federal, right? We've realized the only federal personnel allowed on the land, on the organic land, right, is the U.S. Marshal. So now, we direct the Joint Chiefs of Staff to communicate these first two general civil orders directly to Mr. Obama. The members of the U.S. Congress, the administrators of all federal agencies, the members of the Supreme Court, and those acting as governors to compel their rapid understanding and cooperation. I like how he says, and those acting as governors. Any expense or damage incurred by these organic states or any American state citizen as a result of actions undertaken by any federal agency personnel acting as armed mercenaries on American state soil will be understood as the result of violent crimes committed against the peaceful inhabitants of the land and will incur immediate judgment liquidating the assets of the International Monetary Fund and the Federal Reserve in payment of the stipulated reparations. Such crimes shall also be considered contract default, increasing the public debt subject to bounty. Meaning any expense incurred by the organic people, right, due to the actions taken by the corporation, which would be like them taking the gold out of circulation in 1933, we're not responsible for those things. So therefore, they're responsible for all those. That's what we call the reparations. That's what the reparations are. They take on the debts and obligations of that. They got to discharge that shit, not us. This is where we're going. This is the direction the earth is moving towards. Either you're on this path because you're supposed to be here, and if you're not, hopefully it won't be too late by the time you wake up. But if you're here right now and you're looking and reading this, you're reading this because you're supposed to be reading this right now. Alright? Any and all corporate officers of the United States or any successor organizations inheriting federal service contracts who support, condone, or promote such crimes against the American states or American state citizens shall be subject to arrest and prosecution for commercial and violent crimes. All foreign officials operating as elected or appointed officials of the United States of America, minor, who support, condone, or promote such crimes against the American states or against American state citizens shall be subject to arrest, confiscation of their assets, and deportation to Puerto Rico, Guam, or such other states as may be willing to receive them. So what does that tell you now? It tells you now that all those agents or state actors who refuse to abide by these, when shit gets real, those are the ones who are getting deported to Puerto Rico or Guam, which are territories of the United States Corporation, and any other place that will receive them. And there will be very few places on this planet that receive the people over here who are going crazy. FYI. So, such foreign officials, so which type of people will be deported? Such foreign officials include members of the American and British Bar Associations who were licensed to act as privateers against the interests of the American states and the American state citizens from 1845 to 2013 in flagrant breach of trust. All such licenses are now extinguished. Members of the bar associations are required to cease and desist assaults against the American states and American state citizens, and shall be subject to arrest, confiscation, and deportation otherwise. Where have you heard anything about the African Americans yet? Where have you heard anything about the African Americans yet? Right. Let's keep on reading. Insomuch as corporate officers operating the United States of America, Incorporated, and the United States have contrived under conditions of fraud and semantic deceit to revenue the estates of the American states and living American state citizens to the foreign jurisdiction of the United States of America Minor. Let's go back there. Let's go back just so we can get a clear understanding of what's being said. We want to get a clear understanding of what's being said. So we have people from the United States of America and the United States, meaning the major and the minor, who contrived under conditions of fraud and semantic deceit, meaning wordplay or legalese, to revenue the estates, the states of the American states and the living American state citizens to the foreign jurisdiction of the United States of America Minor. So they revenued the estates of people, meaning they took it from private and they made it public. Bottom line. Bottom line. Hold on. Went in the wrong direction again. Right. Minor. They are found guilty of capital crimes, including acts of fraud and treason committed between 1933 and 1945. What happened in 1933? They took the gold. They took the gold. That was an act of treason. And are condemned posthumously. I don't know exactly what the fuck that means, but I would assume that that means, nigga, you condemned all the way down the line. Insomuch as elected officials operating the United States of America Minor have similarly committed war crimes against the American states and their peaceful inhabitants during the same time period, they stand condemned posthumously. So nobody's getting a pass. Nobody's getting a pass. No enforcement upon any American state or American state citizen is owed as a result of any act of any Congress operating as the sovereign government of the United States of America Minor, nor as the board of directors or board of trustees of any incorporated entity whatsoever. All those estates and estates erroneously believed to represent the American states and American state citizens, and which were conveyed by fraud and legal deceit to the United States of America Minor, and more recently to the city-state of the United Nations, are revenued without exception to the geographically defined American states and the American state citizens, where they shall remain in perpetuity as assets belonging to the rightful and lawful beneficiaries. Perpetuity, meaning constantly, forever going on, never ending. All right? And they're being brought back as assets belonging to the rightful and lawful beneficiaries. All legal fiction entities, however structured and named after the American states and American state citizens, are returned to them and their control, free and clear of any debt, promise, encumbrance, or obligation alleged against them as a result of false claims made in their behalf by officers of the United States of America, Inc. and the United States, Inc., meaning the major and the minor. or by any foreign officials operating the United States of America Minor, or the United Nations city-state falsely claiming to represent them or have jurisdiction over them. We don't got nothing to do with the United Nations. We note that the current circumstances is in part the result of criminal acts engaged in 150 years ago, which resulted in the commercial enslavement of African Americans who were summarily claimed as chattels backing U.S. government debt in the wake of the Civil War. Despite every act of abolition and declaration of prohibition against both peonage and slavery, it has been the policy of the U.S. government to enslave its citizens and to operate as a rogue state among the nations of the world. Instead of freeing African Americans, the sum total result of the Civil War was to vastly expand public sector ownership of slaves, giving rise to the outrageous and improper claims that have been made against the American states and the American state citizens that we are dealing with today. It is uniquely fitting that the Grand Army of the Republic is recalled to settle this circumstance in favor of the people. The right to act comes with the responsibility to act. The right to act comes with the responsibility to act. Alright? So this is on the record. You know what I'm saying? This was sent to where? Alaska. Alright, they have a holding area in Alaska where they can hold up to 2.2 million people. So I wonder why the Pope is writing there. Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Alright, so this is what is the supreme law of the land? The treaties are the supreme law of the land because all constitutions are adopted from treaties. You figure deal me? So this one is a biggie. This one is called Citizenship of the United States Expatriation. So right now what we're talking about is Morocco. Right? Morocco. So, there are strictly speaking no Moroccan laws relating to citizenship of Moorish subjects in Morocco. The fundamental laws of this non-Christian country are based entirely upon the Islamic code, no part of which treats of the subject of citizenship. There are, however, numerous treaties and conventions between the various Christian countries and the Moorish Empire, by means of which citizenship in this country is defined. But as I understand from the above acknowledged instructions that it is not the desire of the department to call for a report upon such lines, I will therefore confine these remarks to general conditions existing, which may possibly be of some use in connection with the information desired. Number 1. Citizenship in Morocco may be said to be governed by the laws pertaining to the same in other countries, with the exception that all persons residing in Morocco who cannot prove foreign citizenship or protection are considered ipso jure as Moorish subjects. Meaning if you are in Morocco, or if you are in the state of Morocco, if you had no ID, you would automatically be considered, if you had no ID that showed foreign status, you would automatically be considered a Moorish subject, right, or Moorish citizen. 2 and 3. Moorish subjects lost their nationality only. Moorish subjects lost their nationality only by becoming naturalized in or protected by another country having treaty relations with the Moorish Empire. So the moment that we became second-class citizenships of the United States, we broke our own oath because we now assume the protection, or we gave our obligation to a country that had treaty relations with our empire. So by doing that, we automatically default ourselves or waive our rights to our citizenship, to our empire. All right? And so it was established by the Convention of Madrid, concluded July 3rd, 1880. Any subject of Morocco who has been naturalized in a foreign country and who shall return to Morocco shall, after having remained for a length of time equal to that which shall have been regularly necessary for him to obtain such naturalization, choose between entire submission to the laws of the empire and the obligation to quit Morocco, unless it shall be proved that his naturalization in a foreign country was obtained with the consent of the government of Morocco. Foreign naturalization heretofore acquired by subjects of Morocco according to the rules established by the laws of each country shall be continued to hereto as regards all its effects without any restriction. The above ruling has never yet been acted upon, and should this at any time be contemplated seriously, a large number of naturalized people, American and others, residing in Morocco would be affected thereby. So a lot of people would be affected if they knew, okay, that they lost their true nationality by becoming citizens of a foreign state. Or I should say a Christian country. Residence in foreign parts does not affect the nationality of Moorish subjects. Residence in foreign parts does not affect the nationality of Moorish subjects, and the Moorish government has no means of protecting its subjects permanently residing in other countries, with the exception of a so-called Moorish consul at Gibraltar and the Moorish agent at Cairo, Egypt. You know what I'm saying? Bang. So this is what we go by. This is what we call identifications. You know, driver's license, IDs, you know, with names in all caps. These are all public trusts, and they're connected to Social Security, the notes, credit cards, what have you. All right? These are all creatures of the state. So looking at the SS4 application in whole, you can understand why, you know, I'm doing what I'm doing. And just so you understand how real this is, you know, type of entity, right? Look over here. See? Nobody thinks about this. Indian tribal government / enterprise. That's what I got my entity as. That's what my tribe is. A government. These are further things, you know, little mandates. When to assign EINs, pretty much to get a better grasp of how the IRS is working and what their little cues are. Okay? Check this. Do not deny an EIN to a taxpayer based solely on the fact that they have not formally established their entity with state or local agencies before obtaining their EIN. The ownership of an entity has changed and a new EIN is required. So once again, you can get an EIN anytime. It's not a question of wait till you do this or do that, then you can go get it. You can go get it right now if you know what you're doing. Go get it. And this right here is letting you know that what frivolous forms are, meaning this is what not to do when filling out the form. This is what you want to follow right here. Get a grasp of what not to do, what you shouldn't have on the form. Alright? So they tell you everything. How an EIN is assigned, the process, everything is stated here. You just got to take the time to sit down and read. And like I said, this PowerPoint is 10 notes. Okay, if you are interested in a PowerPoint, please email me with the subject PowerPoint presentation, and you can send a payment via PayPal for 10 notes to regijus@gmail.com. So I repeat, the email is regijus@gmail.com. You can send payment via PayPal, 10 notes for this PowerPoint. Once payment is verified and sent, I will happily email this PowerPoint over to you so you can have this to go over at your leisure at any time. So yeah, so it's my pleasure to put these together. Just knowing that they help. All right, and this is just comprehending a little bit more about E.I.Ns. The type of series numbers they have in reference to what is what. You know what I'm saying? So 6-7 million series E.I.Ns are reserved for trust, estates, and nonprofit exempt organizations under the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act. Alright? A 6 or 7 million series E.I.N can be identified by the number 6 or 7 immediately following the dash. So this is how we contemplate what's what. So my trust has a 6 series number after the dash. Alright? And this is how you construct or put together a proper entity to move forward and do commerce in using our tax treaties. Alright? And this is how we lock foreigners out, and keep all the wealth in. Alright? And this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do on a grand scale in order to solidify ourselves, not only as American state citizens, but as American people. To save ourselves and our babies. So this is what we got to do. All right, this is not up for debate. And if this is not done, then best believe that we're going to be, those who are not prepared when the storm comes will be in a whole world of hurt. All right. So, with that being said, peace, fam. Appreciate you. And stay tuned for the next podcast. Peace and love.